We'd been together for 6 years. Comfortable. Predictable. The kind of relationship that looked fine from the outside. Shared bills, shared bed, shared routines. We still had sex, maybe once or twice a week, always in the same positions, with the same outcome. Nothing was wrong, exactly. But something was definitely missing. We didn't talk about it. We just went on like most couples probably do. One night, over a bottle of red wine and too much silence, my partner looked at me and said, "What if we did something different?" I raised an eyebrow. Like what? They hesitated, then laughed nervously. I don't know. Have you ever heard of those lifestyle clubs? I laughed too, but the seed was planted. Later that night, in bed, I searched it. Discreet venues, no phones allowed, strict rules about consent, high-end, invitation only. Clean, curated. Not seedy like I'd imagined. I showed them the website. We scrolled together. Curiosity turned into intrigue. We joked about it for a few days. Then one of us said, "What if we actually went?" No touching, no participating. Just a watch. It felt like a thrill, a secret. Like we were breaking out of the dullness we never talked about. We picked a date, RSVP'd, went through the screening. The week leading up to it was strange, tense, but exciting. We talked more, touched more. Maybe this was working already, I thought. Maybe the risk was what we needed. That night, we dressed up. I wore black. They wore red. We didn't say much in the car, just held hands a little tighter than usual. At the entrance, a woman smiled and checked our names off a list. "First time?" she asked. We nodded. "You'll be fine. Just observe. Stay within your boundaries." Boundaries. That word hung in my mind. The moment we walked in, it felt like stepping into another world. Dim lighting, slow music, bodies moving with intention. Some clothed, some not. No shame, just comfort. It wasn't what I expected. It was elegant, controlled, erotic, but not vulgar. We got drinks and stood near a wall, just watching. There was something oddly safe about it. And yet I could feel the tension in my chest. I looked at my partner. They were smiling, comfortable, curious, not nervous like me. We watched a couple kiss slowly across the room, a stranger's hand on the woman's back. I wondered how far this could go. I wondered who we were becoming, standing there like this. I leaned in. Still just watching, right? They nodded, but their eyes were on something else now. I followed their gaze. A couple was inviting others to join them. I looked back at my partner. They didn't look away. I felt something shift. Not between us. Within me. Something quiet. Something dangerous. We stood near the bar, drinks in hand, trying to look like we belonged. My partner was scanning the room with calm confidence, while I sipped slowly, pretending to be as unfazed. The air was heavy with scent, perfume, sweat, desire. A soft murmur of conversations, gasps, laughter. Eyes met us occasionally. Polite nods, knowing smiles. No pressure, but everything felt like an invitation. A woman approached us. Elegant, poised, clearly experienced. She introduced herself, said she liked our energy. She was joined by a man who barely spoke, but his gaze was intense. They chatted casually, asked if we'd been before. My partner did most of the talking. I watched, silent, trying to read the space between them. There was a chemistry forming, subtle, but undeniable. The woman leaned closer, whispered something in my partner's ear. They smiled, then looked at me, as if asking for permission without really waiting for it. "We're just going to look around," they said, already starting to move. I nodded, not wanting to be the killjoy. I stayed by the bar, alone now, eyes trailing them as they disappeared into a hallway. Minutes passed. Or maybe longer. I checked my phone, though I knew it wouldn't work here. I felt exposed. Jealousy crept in quietly, not as rage, but as a low ache. I had agreed to this. We said we'd just watch. We said everything would be mutual. But now I wasn't sure if that still held. A man took the seat beside me. Older, calm, sharply dressed. He didn't touch me. He just spoke. Said he'd seen me come in. Said I looked like someone who thought too much. I gave a half smile, said nothing. He didn't push. Just talked about control, about letting go, about the things people come here for. Sometimes it's not about the sex, he said. It's about watching someone become someone else. The words hit deeper than I expected. He wasn't flirting. He was diagnosing. I hated how right he was. My partner was somewhere else, maybe becoming someone else. And I was here, being who I always was, safe, careful, distant. I finally asked if he'd seen them. He nodded. They looked comfortable, he said. That was all. I felt sick. I got up, wandered the edges of the rooms, caught glimpses of bodies in motion. Not looking for them, exactly, but not avoiding it either. I saw things I couldn't unsee, heard sounds that stayed under my skin. The space was alive with craving, but I felt none of it. Just a hollowed-out stillness. I turned a corner and saw them. Not fully, but enough. My partner, close with the other woman. Her hand on their chests, low. Their lips close. My breath caught. I backed away. No words. No confrontation. Just a realization. The line had been crossed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, the way most things actually fall apart. I didn't go looking for anything after that. I didn't even feel angry. Predictable. Just the kind of relationship that looked fine from the outside. That feels like shared bills, shared I walked bed, back to the lounge, shared routines, sat alone, finished my drink. Sex. My partner still hadn't twice a week. They weren't always in the same position. That said more than anything. Same outcome. The man from earlier returned. Exactly. Sat beside me again. But something was he didn't ask questions. We didn't talk about it with a calm that we just went on like most couples probably do. You stayed, he said. One night, most over a bottle of red wine, see what they weren't ready for. My partner looked at me and said, "I just looked at something different." And for the first time, I raised an eyebrow. I didn't feel self-conscious. Like what? They felt something else, something then darker, laughed nervously, quieter. I don't know. I was done thinking. Have you ever heard of those? I asked if he wanted to go somewhere private. He didn't flinch too. He just nodded, stood. Later that night, I followed. I searched no hand-holding, discreet venues, no whispered no phones allowed, strict rules about consent. I didn't tell myself I was getting revenge. Clean, it wasn't curated. About that. Not it was seedy, about control, like I'd imagined. About not feeling them like the one left behind. We scrolled about together. Doing something curiosity turned into in intrigue. The room. We joked about it for a few days. It wasn't wild. Then either. One of us said, "It was slow. What if we actually went?" Like we both knew exactly what this participating, was, and just pretend it was anything else. It felt like a thrill. He didn't kiss me, and I didn't want him to. We were breaking out of the dullness. We never talked about. I wanted to remember. We picked every a date, second of crossing the line. Went through the screening. It didn't take long. The week leading up to it ended, I felt nothing. Tense, no guilt, no clarity. Touched more. Quiet kind of maybe this was working already. Somehow worse than regret. Maybe the risk. He didn't try to stay or talk. That night, he just left. We dressed up. That was fine. I wore black. That was the point. They wore red. I stayed there. We didn't say much in the car. Looking up at the ceiling, a little tighter, wondering if my partner was done. At the entrance, wondering if they had crossed the same line and checked our names off a list. I realized I didn't care. She asked, not in the way I thought I would. You'll be fine. I just knew that something had shifted within your boundaries, and there was no way back to the version of us that had hung in my mind. When I finally stepped back out, it felt everything like stepping into another world. Soft lights, dim lighting, whispered voices, slow music. Nothing had changed, moving with intention. And yet everything had. Some clothes. I spotted my partner across the room. No shame. They were laughing, hair messy. It wasn't what I expected. They didn't see me. It was elegant, or maybe they did and looked away. Erotic, either way, but not vulgar. We didn't speak. We got I went back to the bar, stood near a wall, got another drink, just watching, and stood by myself. There was something oddly safe about it. We didn't leave together. And yet we didn't even acknowledge each other for the rest of the night. I looked at my partner. That was the part that stayed with me the most. Comfortable. How easy it was to become strangers. Not nervous. How fast it happened. We watched a couple kiss slowly across the room. We didn't talk about it the next morning. On the woman's back. No questions. I wondered how far this could go. I wondered who we were becoming. Neither of us wanted to be the one to say it out loud. I leaned in. The drive home was quiet. Still just watching, right? I looked out the window. They nodded. My partner's eyes were on something else now. The night before felt followed their gaze, but the distance between us was inviting others to join them. Thick, I looked back at my partner. They didn't look away. When we got back to the apartment, something shift. We moved around each other like strangers. Within me, something quiet. They made something dangerous. No eye contact. We stood near the bar. No casual touches. Trying to look like we belonged. That says everything. My partner was scanning the room with calm confidence, watched the steam rise from the mug, slowly, and pretending to feel something as unfazed. I expected guilt. The air was heavy with scent. I didn't feel it. Perfume, I expected sweat, anger, desire. That was gone too. A soft murmur of conversation. All I felt was done. Gasps, they sat across from me, finally
eyes
looking
met
up.
us occasionally.
Their eyes
polite
said it.
nods,
They knew.
knowing smiles.
I knew. No
We
pressure.
both did things
but
we couldn't
everything
take
felt
back.
like an invitation.
But instead of blame,
a woman approached
there was
us.
just this
Elegant,
mutual resignation.
poised,
Like we
clearly
had both held the
experienced.
match and
She
struck
introduced
it at the
herself,
same time.
said she
No one
liked
was
our
innocent.
energy.
She
no
was
one
joined
owed the
by a
other
man
anything
who
more
barely
than this
spoke,
moment of
but his
truth.
gaze was intense.
They finally spoke.
They chatted casually.
So what
asked
now?
if we'd been before.
I didn't answer
My
right
partner
away.
did most of the
I didn't
talking.
know.
We
I
could
watched,
pretend,
silent,
go back to
trying
our
to
routine,
read the
bury
space
it all.
between them.
Or we
There was
could
a
walk
chemistry
away,
forming,
carry
subtle,
this silence
but
with us into
undeniable.
separate lives.
The woman leaned
Both
closer,
options felt
whispered
wrong.
something in
Both
my
felt
partner's
possible.
ear.
They
I said,
smiled.
I
then
don't
looked
think
at
we're
me
the same
as
people
if
anymore.
asking for permission
They
without
nodded.
really waiting for
No
it.
argument.
We're just going to look
That
around.
scared me more than
They
if they'd
said,
yelled.
already starting
The
to
fact
move.
that they agreed
I nodded,
so easily
not
told
wanting
me
to be
everything.
the killjoy.
We were
I
already
stayed by
on
the bar,
separate paths.
alone now.
That night
Eyes
didn't
trailing
change
them
us.
as they
It
disappeared into a
revealed
hallway.
what was already
Minutes
broken.
passed. For
Or
days
maybe
after,
longer.
we barely
I
spoke.
checked my phone,
Shared
though I knew it
space,
wouldn't work here.
not words.
I felt
the tension
exposed.
wasn't loud. It
Jealousy
was dead.
crept in quietly.
We didn't fight,
not as rage.
We didn't try,
but as a
we just
low
waited.
ache.
Eventually,
I
I
packed
packed
a
a
bag.
bag.
Told
We said
them I'd
we'd
just
stay
watch.
somewhere else for a while.
We said
They
everything
didn't
would
stop
be
me.
mutual.
They just
But
said,
now I wasn't
take
sure
care.
if that still held.
I walked out the
A
door,
man took the seat
and
beside
didn't
me.
look back.
Older,
Not
calm,
because I didn't
sharply
care,
dressed,
but
he
because
didn't touch
I knew
me.
if I did,
He just
I
spoke.
might second guess it.
Said he'd seen
And
me come
I couldn't
in.
afford that.
Said I looked like
Not
someone
after
who thought
everything.
too much.
Sometimes
I gave a half
I wonder
smile,
what would have
said
happened
nothing.
if
He
we
didn't
never
push.
went. Just
If we
talked
had just kept
about
pretending
control,
everything
about
was
letting
fine,
go, maybe
about
we
the
would
things
have
people
lasted
come here
longer.
for.
Maybe we would have
Sometimes
still
it's not
ended.
about the sex,
but
he
at
said.
least now I know
It's
the
about
truth.
watching someone
We weren't
become
bored.
someone else.
We were done.
The words hit
we just
deeper
didn't
than I
admit it
expected.
until we gave ourselves
He wasn't
permission
flirting.
to break. He was
The
diagnosing.
club didn't ruin us.
I hated
We
how
were
right
already
he was.
unraveling.
My partner was
It just
somewhere
sped
else.
up the process.
Maybe becoming
Gave us
someone
the freedom
else.
to cross
And I
lines
was
we were
here,
too afraid
being
to
who I
even talk
always
about.
was, safe.
That night
careful,
didn't destroy
distant.
anything.
I
It
finally
revealed
asked if he'd
everything.
seen them.
We
He
went to
nodded.
an orgy
They
club
looked
and
comfortable.
everything
he said.
changed.
That was all.
Not because of what
I
we
felt
saw,
sick,
but
I got
because
up,
of what we finally
wandered the
saw
edges
in
of the
each other,
rooms,
or
caught glimpses
what
of
we
bodies
stopped
in
seeing.
motion. Not looking for them, exactly, but not avoiding it either. I saw things I couldn't unsee, heard sounds that stayed under my skin. The space was alive with craving, but I felt none of it. Just a hollowed-out stillness. I turned a corner and saw them. Not fully, but enough. My partner, close with the other woman. Her hand on their chests low. Their lips close. My breath caught. I backed away. No words. No confrontation. Just a realization. The line had been crossed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, the way most things actually fall apart.